And welcome in to Friday Take. I am Devin Albertson as I'm going solo to start the show today. As on this beautiful Friday, it's just beautiful in Maryville right now, and really enjoying this weather and everything that it brings to this campus. But we're going to get started here with some Bearcat Athletics, and of course tomorrow is the annual whiteout game. Tomorrow, January 27th, Northwest Missouri State Bearcat basketball teams host rival Missouri Western. Wear your cleanest white shirt to Bearcat Arena for the annual whiteout game. The women's game starts at 1:30 with the men following at 3:30. Prizes and giveaways will be available. Also, make sure you tune in to X106 as I believe it's going to be Ryan Elliott and Jenny James on the call for us here at X106. Should be a good broadcast there for those two as they always do a bang-up job for us here at X106. As if you look at the games for tomorrow, we get Northwest versus Missouri Western. Start with the girls' game first. And Missouri Western coming into town. Northwest, they're really struggling this year on I believe, a 15-game losing streak right now. And just having trouble getting it turned around. Missouri Western comes in 10-9. They're on a 6-game losing streak themselves. And just following on Twitter, they've had a lot of issues just with numbers on their team, just not having the bodies available to play in some of these games. Against Nebraska Kearney last Saturday, they lost by 6 points. They only played 5 girls the entire game, didn't have any substitutions to make, so that was a real struggle for them. I believe a couple games ago versus Southwest Baptist, by the time the game was over, they were playing with 4 girls on the floor because of foul trouble and other issues and injuries, so they're a team, they've lost 6 straight, lost to Pitt State and Southern on the road, and lost at home to Central Missouri and Southwest Baptist, and lost on the road again to Fort Hays and Nebraska Kearney. So they're a team that's on the circle bus as well right now, but they come to Maryville after a week off, just like the Bearcats. And it should be an interesting thing to see if the girls, if they can get going with that whiteout crowd behind them, and just try to salvage a little bit of the season a bit. 1-17 now, 15-game losing streak. They're 1-5 at home. But we'll see what happens. They were really close last Thursday when they played at Nebraska Kearney. They lost by 9 in double overtime. They were really close, just couldn't quite get the win in the end. So that's what we have for the girls' game, and of course, then they'll play again next Thursday at home versus Lincoln University, a very winnable game. The next Saturday versus Lindenwood, also at Bearcat Arena. So we have a little bit of a 3-game homestand here for the girls. They get time to reboot and rest here this week off between the Hayes and the Western game, and just try to get their feet underneath them and see what they can do going forward. So that's the women's games first, and then we're going to go to the men's side of things. Look at Missouri Western coming in today. They're 3-14, I believe, last in the MIAA, as they are 1-9 in conference play. They are also on an 8-game losing streak. Their last win came against Living the Dream back in December 19th, I believe, is what their website shows right now is the exhibition game. So I guess their last true win was Northeastern State at home, and that was early December. So we were in late January. The struggles continue for the Missouri Western men's basketball team as well. And Northwest played them earlier this year, the start of that 8-game losing streak. Northwest defeated the Griffins by 14 down in the Fieldhouse in St. Joseph. Just really struggling right now for Missouri Western. Last week they went on the road. They got blown out by Hayes and lost by Kearney by 7. So that's where they're at right now. I watched them play earlier this year versus Upper Iowa. They actually got a win in that game. They played surprisingly well. Guys to look for from Missouri Western. Cole Clearman, one of their guards, is okay. The other guys in the roster are standing out to me right now, but that's a team that definitely keep your eye on going forward. Maybe they come in. Teams usually do that, come to Northwest, play their best games of the season coming in. You look at the Northwest men's team, 16-2. Did pick up their second loss to conference play last week. They lost at Nebraska Kearney, but good news for the Bearcats. Washburn, who right now they're trailing in the conference standings, also lost last week. And a surprising loss to, I believe, Pitt State. So Washburn was able to slide down a game to Northwest, still only a game behind in conference play, going in to about halfway point in conference play. Right now, Washburn is 9-1, Northwest 8-2, Central Missouri and Central Oklahoma both at 7-3, Missouri Southern at 7-4. But Missouri Southern just had an ugly loss. I know they beat Northwest a few weeks ago, but they lost to, I believe it was Northeastern State. They lost to Northeastern State last week on the road, 78-48. That's not good. Northeastern State this year is 2-8 in conference play and 6-13 overall, and they would beat Southern by 30. So not a great showing there for Missouri Southern, one of the top teams in the conference, to lay an egg last week. They're a team that's really up and down. But Northwest and Washburn right now, looking at the two-team race for the conference championship. Washburn, their schedule for the next couple of days. Northwest looking to try to catch them. They have Central Missouri at home tomorrow. So that's a big game there, as it's 1 versus 3 in the conference. The next week they go to Kearney and to Hayes. So a tough 3-game stretch here for Washburn, followed by a home game versus Western and then Northwest here in 3 Saturdays. In Topeka, Kansas. Should be a fun matchup that could decide if Northwest gets at least a share of the conference crown or not. So that's one thing we have to look forward here in MIAA play. But also, one thing to look forward to on Saturday, Chris Ibu-Endow. He's got 992 points coming into today. He needs 8 points to reach 1,000 points, to be the 22nd person in Northwest basketball history to get 1,000 points for the men's basketball team. And, of course, you have Northwest leading scorer all-time, Justin Pitts. A couple other names you might recognize on this list if you're, depending on your age, Vic Coleman, Scott Fleming, Deshaun Cooper, Kelvin Parker, Hunter Henry, Connor Crooker, Austin Meyer, current assistant coach, Elijah Allen, Zach Snyder, among others, including Dylan Starzl. But he's looking to become another 1,000-point scorer. Also, if he gets to that 1,000 point, he'll join the 1,000 point 500 rebound club. Will be the 12th member of that club. The last member to get there would be Dylan Starzl in the 2011 to 2014 seasons. So Chris Ibu-Endow making history here at Northwest. Trying to join the 1,000 point club and the 1,500 club as well. So good luck to Endow tomorrow, as he really picked up the slack last week after Justin Pitts went out. And as Pitts got hurt versus Nebraska Kearney, played the entire game but couldn't play versus Fort Hays due to a hit to the head he suffered in the Kearney game. Endow came out, went 6 of 9 from the field, 2 of 3 from 3, made 6 free throws of 11 attempts, and then had 14 rebounds and 20 points. Just did a great job running the offense there for Northwest. Also, players to step up last week, Joey Wittes had 15 points on 8 shots. Brett Doherty had 12 points on 7 shots. Welty had 12 points on 4 shots because, of course, he loves to rain it from the outside. But 3 of 4 from 3 that made all 3 free throws. Then Xavier Kurth had 10 points. So a lot of additions across the board. Also with Doherty, he went 5 of 7 from the field. He did go 3 of 8 from the free throw line, which is one thing in his game he really needs to keep working on. So 13 points, but also 7 assists. That's great for a big man to get in there and get that ball moving and get easy buckets for everybody else. So if Doherty keeps playing like that, Northwest should be fine. I haven't heard anything whether Pitts is going to be playing in this game versus Missouri Western, but if not, Northwest has enough firepower outside of him to win a game versus Missouri Western. They would probably need him next week, though. And one thing, if Pitts doesn't play this game, it might be okay, just because you get him off his feet a little bit. You can let him get another week of rest on those legs, and then take a charge for the final month or two of the season going into postseason play, which Northwest will make this year as well. So that's one thing to look for there with Northwest, is how they play if Pitts doesn't play, how the other guys around him kind of step their game up a little bit and carry the team if Pitts can't go tomorrow versus Missouri Western. So yeah, just make sure you keep an eye on Endow trying to join that 1,000 point 500 club tomorrow with the call with Ryan Elliott and Jenny James. As we're going to take a break, but when we come back, we're going to go and talk about this new league that's going to restart here in 2020. And I'll let you know what that is next here on the Friday Take. And welcome back into Friday Take. I'm Devin Albertson. I'll be joined momentarily by Ryan Elliott. We're going to talk about a league that's coming back to the sports world. It started in 2001 and ended in 2001. It was the XFL. It's coming back as Vince McMahon announced yesterday that he is restarting the league that failed back in 2001. Should be interesting. I know when this first came out, I was really kind of like, okay, this could be really, based on the time they're doing it right after the football season ends for the NFL. They're going to have 8 teams, 40 player rosters. Should be really interesting to see how this works out. Last time this happened. They haven't announced where the teams are going to be, but the last time the 8 teams in the Eastern Division, it was the Birmingham Thunderbolts, the Chicago Enforcers, the New York/New Jersey Hitmen, the Orlando Rage, the Las Vegas Outlaws, the Los Angeles Extreme, the Memphis Maniacs, and the San Francisco Demons. And I don't know about you, but those are some pretty cool names for the XFL they had back in the day. And I was looking up just kind of their helmets and stuff. They had some pretty sweet helmets there in the XFL as Ryan Elliott joins me. Demons, Outlaws, Maniacs, Hitmen. They had pretty much everything they wanted to, and they were pretty much down on the field too. Pretty much.
I mean, the XFL was. It was all flash. It was all gimmicks. It was really a lot of what the WWE was at the time. I mean, it was a league that was designed for an audience that didn't really care a whole lot about football.
Yeah, definitely there was.
And that's why it only lasted a season. But I think, Vince McMahon, is taking it in a different direction this time. I know he said that in his announcement, that he's going to kind of drift toward away from the gimmicks, away from all the flash, and try to make this a legitimate football league.
Yeah, and definitely the MVP of that league was Tommy Maddox, who played for the Los Angeles Extreme, and of course, the winner of the Eastern Division for the Orlando, their quarterback was Jeff Brom, and now coaches at Purdue. So, definitely a couple of names were in that league. There is one gift going around where Jeff Brom gets absolutely lit up by a defender, and then he ended up coming back in the game. He's like, "That's football. What are you gonna do?" So, it was definitely a league that hit hard. But many made fun of the league. They also had some colorful announcers for some of those games with Ventura and other wrestling dudes.
Jesse the Body Ventura, who is he a senator now in Minnesota?
He was at one time. I don't think he's now. But
was he the governor of Minnesota? I don't remember.
He was the governor of Minnesota for a while.
Yeah. Anyway.
So definitely interesting to see how that all went down. A couple other quarterbacks that played during that time. Mark Gribe. He also played in the Arena Football League for a while. I know that. I don't recognize many of these names, but...
Do you think that these are guys that maybe had an opportunity at the NFL if they had stuck it out for a year or two, instead tried to jump to the XFL and kind of ruin their chances?
Maybe. That's definitely possible with the XFL and how it went down.
Because I feel like it's probably hard to take, especially a guy like Tommy Maddox, who really had a solid resume. I mean, he played for the Steelers for a while coming out of UCLA, and had a solid NFL career. I think if he had continued in the NFL instead of trying to jump ship as he did in 2001 to the XFL, he might have been able to continue on.
Yeah, definitely played, of course, in the XFL for 01. Then he came back to the Steelers afterwards, played 02 through 05 or so. Then he finally retired. He tried out for the Raiders in 06, didn't make the team, and then he went to the Arena Football League for a little bit. So
he can officially say he is the only person in football history to have ever won a Super Bowl and an XFL championship.
All right, that works. It's very interesting what's going on there. So
he was the backup in 2006 Super Bowl 40 Steelers?
Yep, I think so. So that's what was happening in the XFL. Also, one thing I'm kind of interested to see here is McMahon's doing a really hardline stance against anybody who is in trouble with the law at all, and that they will not be allowed to play. So he already said, like, if you have a DUI, you're not allowed to play. So Manziel's out. You have to stand for the national anthem, so Colin Kaepernick's most likely out. So I was interested to see what quarterbacks he could get into the league that have any type of name brand that helps. If you have that name brand quarterback, people will watch a little bit more.
Yeah, which is interesting because I think people are blindly connecting Johnny Manziel to the XFL. Even though the Hamilton Tiger Cats already have the rights to Johnny Manziel if he agrees to go to Canada. But it's interesting that people are just kind of automatically connecting him in that case.
It's a flashy name. So
right. And people go, okay, well, he's going to the XFL. It's already done. As you mentioned, under the stipulations that McMahon brought forth. Now, we don't know if that's just him blowing smoke, but
it's true. It's definitely possible.
But under the stipulations that he talked about, certainly Manziel would be out. As you mentioned, Kaepernick would probably be out. There's I don't want to say a limited choice of quarterback, but there are some guys that you look at that are like NFL draft eligible this year that aren't necessarily NFL quarterbacks, or even the next couple of years that maybe might make it in a league like that. Like you look at guys that are college quarterbacks, a guy like Trace McSorley at Penn State, dude's just a college quarterback.
Yeah.
Tim Tebow was
Definitely
a college quarterback, and so maybe those kind of guys that don't necessarily have the talent set for the NFL, but they are winners and they want to go out and compete and play football. Maybe those are the guys you look for.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting to see where these games will be hosted, which cities will actually take them on if they try to get one back in San Diego or in Oakland to try to go where the markets where the NFL is left a little bit, St. Louis maybe. So we'll see what happens to see kind of where direction they head to. If these, I don't think they have the same 8 teams as last time. They're going to try to reboot a little bit and try to be a little more straight and narrow with it, not be quite so over the top as it was last time, as you said earlier, with like WWE style. And there were rumors last time, like all the games are rigged. I don't know why you would rig an XFL game. It seems like a little much to me.
I don't know. I mean, these are the professional wrestling guys. They might rig anything.
That's definitely,
you can never be too sure.
See, I think we'll have more on that later. I know for our afternoon show, I'm sure Trevor will want to talk about this a little bit.
Probably.
We'll throw it in there with our Pro Bowl talk later on.
Yeah,
so
absolutely. Because there's never anything important to talk about with the Pro Bowl.
Except for how to fix it, maybe.
It's a ridiculous thing. I'm more excited about the XFL than I am the Pro Bowl, and the XFL doesn't start for another 2 years. So that tells you how exciting the Pro Bowl is.
Yep, 2020, the XFL is coming back to the sports world, is at least what Vince McMahon tells us. So
hopefully.
We'll see what happens. And even if it does come back, even if it's not a great product, it's during time of the year.
Fun.
It's time of the year, you're like, you know what? There's really nothing else going on. If you're not an NBA person or college basketball, you're like, well,
I love
college basketball. I like the NBA, but it's like, you know what? I want to watch some football. Let's turn the XFL on to see what's going on there. At least just see what's happening there. So I think when we have a 10-game schedule and stuff like that. So
yeah, which I think it's McMahon mentioned a more accessible, more family-friendly, faster-paced, shorter,
2-hour limit, stuff like that.
And honestly, the NFL or football in general isn't necessarily a sport that needs sped up that much, but I'm sure it's not going to hurt.
Yeah, definitely not. And if you want to make a little niche for yourself, like, hey, it's like soccer. You come in 2 hours in, 2 hours out. I mean, it's one of the things that can just appeal to people. Like, hey, you don't spend a whole lot of time, just a couple hours with us. That's all you need.
Maybe Vince McMahon should consider starting his own baseball league. He could speed up that sport.
Steroids
only.
Steroids only. Speaking of steroids and baseball, we're going to take a break and come back and talk about a little bit of the Hall of Fame and also some of the worst contracts in baseball history up next here on Friday Take. And welcome back into Friday Take. Devin Albertson with Ryan Elliott here as we're going to talk about some MLB. We just got some news on Twitter. Unfortunately for Kansas City Royals fans, Kane is gone. Was it 5 years, $80 million in Milwaukee? But they might be bringing Escobar back, so there's that. The guy no one wanted is going to be back in Kansas City probably. There you go. Turn your mic on.
Yeah, okay. I figured. I was waiting. I wasn't going to say anything. I'm loud enough that they probably heard me over your mic, but it's really unfortunate. Alcides Escobar is a pretty good baseball player, but he's the fourth of the four. He's the one that there weren't a whole lot of teams in Major League Baseball going after. He wasn't really a highly sought after prospect the way Kane and Hosmer especially were, and Moustakas to an extent. But it'll be good for Kansas City fans to have a familiar face back on the infield. Even if it's not necessarily the one you wanted out of the bunch, it is somebody, and it's probably better than the alternative.
Yeah, and I got another tweet here from another guy verified on Twitter. Robert Murray said sources: the Royals and Escobar have a deal pending physical. So it's
almost official.
It's pretty much done in Kansas City. So, yeah, at least to get Escobar back. I mean, we'll see what happens.
There are worse people in the league to have back.
Yes, there are worse shortstops to have, and he is still decently defensively. So you have that, and he's really good at the first pitch. Also, this is kind of a weird stat, not baseball related, but Bill Self was announced as the University of Kansas men's coach on July 21st of 2003. Today, Bill Self is on his 5,394th day on the job. Roy Williams was the coach from 88 to 03, was exactly 5,394 days. So they're right at the same mark right now.
Well,
Bill Self's going to break it tomorrow.
Yeah.
And a little more success at Kansas.
So what you're saying is if they lose to Texas A&M tomorrow, Self's fired.
Yes, it's been too long.
One day after.
It's been too long.
No. Kansas will not fire Bill Self until you're talking like several seasons in a row where they don't win the Big 12 and maybe one time they don't make the tournament or something along those lines.
If he leaves because he wants to leave and go somewhere else.
Yeah, they're not going to fire him.
Unless it's the NBA, I don't see anybody else taking him.
It would take an unprecedented run of terrible basketball at Kansas to make them fire Bill
And a
Self.
team full of Kansas players in the NBA for him to go.
Which the history that Kansas has had in the NBA compared to some other schools, not likely.
Not likely. So going back to baseball here, a tweet here. Last year, Escobar had 629 plate appearances. On-base percentage was .272.
Ooh.
It's not great.
It's no good.
That's not great.
It's no good. He's a good fielder, though.
Good fielder. And so he's coming back. Be interesting to see what the terms of that deal when it comes in, how much it's going to cost to keep him. Because if it's not much, it's like, okay. It's almost like a token deal. So, because free agency was really, really quiet this year. It's just starting to heat up over the past like 24 hours.
How old is Escobar? Do we know?
I'm not even sure.
I'm thinking like maybe early 30s, late 20s, somewhere in that range.
31.
31. So I'm saying, give me 4 years, $35 million on Escobar. I don't think he's quite $10 million a year worthy. But I don't know why that was what came to mind, but that's what came to mind.
Right, it seems reasonable
because everybody and their mom in the MLB is getting $5 million or more a year now.
Yeah,
it's ridiculous.
True. That's true. So
even the September call-ups are getting $2-3 million a year anymore.
Yeah. So, and also with Lorenzo Cain reaching that 5 years, $80 million, he got to that mark where the Royals still get a draft pick and compensation for him leaving. It's got to be, I think it's the $80 million is right at the mark there where you get a compensation, which everybody kind of worried about with Musnaka because he still had to sign that he might sign a 1-year deal and the Royals get nothing for him.
Right.
But at least with Kane getting that $80 million deal from Milwaukee, they're going to get picks back for him.
Well, and I think the unfortunate part about Mustakis is he was going to have to sign a 6 or 7 year deal in order to get $80 million. He's not the kind of guy that's going to sign a $16 million a year deal like Kane will.
It's the second biggest contract handed out this season. It's actually the longest and the most money. But Carlos Santana, 3 years, $60 million. So you have
$20 million a year.
So Kane now at 5 years, $80 million. So Kane is 31. It's where he started his career over Milwaukee before he was traded to the Royals, along with Escobar and others for Zach Greinke that ended up propelling the Royals to win a World Series.
And Zach Greinke
AL titles.
Was not good in Milwaukee.
No, he wasn't. He wasn't. So it was a great trade for the Royals back then. So also the Brewers traded for Yelich yesterday from Miami as they're having a fire sale down there still.
Yeah, they're
thanks Jeter.
The Brewers are really shoring up that outfield. If Ryan Braun can have any sort of a semblance of what he used to be in that outfield as well, between Yelich and Kane in center and Braun and wherever they decide to put him. Is he in left now? He used to be a right fielder. I don't know.
It might be left now.
He's been all over the place. But if he can have even if he's anywhere remotely close to what he used to be, that Brewers outfield is going to be dangerous next season.
Yes, and also one more thing, you talking about pretty much giving money out to anybody. Jose Reyes got a 1 year, $2 million deal.
Jose Reyes
with $500,000 in incentives.
He's like 175 years old now in shortstop years.
Yep, and he started his career with the Mets back in 2003.
He's getting to like Fernando Vina levels.
He's only 30.
You need to get out of the league now.
He says he's only 34.
Still though, that's pretty old for.
He's been in the league for 14 years. Probably
Shortstops don't.
That's true.
You need to be pretty young to play shortstop.
He got in the league when he was 20 years old. So that's probably why it seems like he's older.
Youngin'.
So he got up there.
Albert Pujols is the same way. He's been around for
ever.
Let's see, it's 18, so 17 years, and he's not 40 yet.
Or productive.
Well,
I love Pujols, but he's no longer productive out there in L.A. For the Angels, as they have him as a designated hitter now. He's 38 years old, so getting up there in age for Mr. Pujols.
Although he did have the average.
He had an okay year last year.
The average is never going to be what it was in St. Louis, but he did have he came back with the power numbers a little bit last year. He hit almost 30 home runs.
He hit 241, 23 homers, and 101 RBIs.
Yeah.
So
and that's a solid season for most DHs. But when you compare it to what he was doing and the historic numbers that he put up in St. Louis,
talking about like 05 when he hit 330, 41 homers, 117 RBIs.
Yeah, and there was a stretch of he was the first person in MLB history to go the first 9 consecutive seasons hitting 300, 30 home runs, 100 RBIs.
Yep, all the way from 01 to 2010. And the one year that he didn't was 2011 with the Cardinals, and he hit 299, 37 home runs, and 99 RBIs. He was close for 10 straight years, so he was a guy who was just an absolute animal for the Cardinals back in his day. Then he signed a huge contract with the Angels. So this is year 7 of that deal.
Yeah, so he signed, it was 10 years, $270 million, I think.
That's going to be brutal the last couple of years for that contract. Love Pujols, but
he's gonna be by the time the contract's over, he's gonna be 41, and
getting paid.
Yeah, and absolutely should retire.
Yeah, definitely. He's just compiling stats.
Sign a 1-day contract with the St. Louis Cardinals and retire.
Definitely possible. And like even now, after he's left the Cardinals, he hadn't hit for over 300 since 2010. He's still hitting 305 for his career. That includes a 244 season, a 241 season, 260. So that's how good he was early in his career to keep his average.
Down first ballot Hall of Famer.
Yes, definitely.
Without a doubt.
People shouldn't.
One of the greatest hitters in MLB history.
You got to look at that St. Louis career. Like this guy was absolutely insane in what he did in that franchise. So speaking of bad contracts, though, you were writing a paper Offit.
For my good friend and advisor and professor.
He's a great dude.
Mr. Jason Offit. I'm in an opinion writing class with him, and one of my opinion pieces is the top 5 worst deals in MLB history. Now, these are deals in the form of it could be either a trade or free agent signing. So, surprisingly, the Albert deal is not on the list.
Honorable mention.
Because, I'd give it an honorable mention because he did have he's put up some solid power numbers in the last couple of years in L.A. He's helped him a little bit. He's done a lot better than all the guys on this list. So number 5 is the Boston Red Sox signing Carl Crawford in 2011. They signed him to a 7-year, $142 million contract that he promptly celebrated by hitting a pedestrian 255 the season after. So the season before he signed the contract, he hit 307 with 19 homers, 90 RBIs, and led the league with 13 triples. The next season, he hit 255 and missed 32 games with an injury. The next season, he only played 31 games before he had to have multiple surgeries that ended his season. So the next year, then the Red Sox dumped him on the Dodgers, and then promptly this season they paid him $21 million. Or this last season in 2017, they paid Carl Crawford $21 million. Carl Crawford retired in 2016. They paid him to not play baseball last year. They paid him $21 million to not play baseball. That's how bad that contract was.
Not bad at all.
Number 4 was the Pittsburgh Pirates trading Jose Bautista to the Blue Jays in 2008. They sent Bautista to Toronto for minor league prospect Robinson Diaz. Bautista went on to become one of the most feared hitters in baseball. Diaz played 43 games in 2 seasons with Pittsburgh and then retired. Ouch.
Yeah, that's not great.
Number 3 is the Chicago Cubs trading Lou Brock to the St. Louis Cardinals in 1964. They sent Brock to St. Louis in exchange for pitcher Ernie Broglio. Brock has been remembered in St. Louis as one of the greatest Cardinals of all time. Ernie Broglio is remembered by no one anywhere for anything.
Oops.
He played 2 more years, won, I think, 2 games in 65 and 66, and then retired.
That's when the Cubs were just cubbing every year, just doing what they do. Until
it was rough.
Yeah. Nice.
Number 2 is the infamous Bobby Bonilla deal. With the New York Mets. Since 2011, July 1st has been referred to as Bobby Bonilla Day. Bonilla signed the deal with the Mets after the 1999 season. Their owner had gotten into some financial trouble with Bernie Madoff's Ponzi scheme, lost a bunch of money. They couldn't afford to pay the $6 million that they owed Bobby Bonilla. So Bonilla agreed to not collect any salary until 2011, where the strangest contract in MLB history started.
Yeah.
25 years, $29 million. Every year on July 1st, Bobby Bonilla gets paid $1.19 million by the New York Mets until 2035, at which point he will have been retired for 34 years.
It's a good pension plan.
No kidding. Please, I'll sign that deal with the
Not
New
a
York
great
Mets.
business model if you want to be the
I know
Mets
I didn't play
going
baseball.
forward.
And, Bobby Bonilla played a total of like 120 games with the Mets over his entire career. He spent 2 stints with the Mets and didn't play a full season either time. And number one, the worst deal in the history of sports, the Boston Red Sox selling really, Babe Ruth to the New York Yankees for $100,000. But which was a lot of money in 1919 when it happened, but that's nothing in comparison to the 86 years that it took Boston to recover from that, they didn't win a World Series until 2004. Meanwhile, the Yankees rattled off 4 World Series with Babe Ruth on the roster over the next 10 years.
That's an absolutely loaded team.
Yeah.
Thanks, Boston, for adding to that lineup.
So that's my top 5, and there are some really bad ones out there that I didn't mention.
Right now, you want to mention one that's current? Pablo Sandoval.
Yeah.
He signed a 5-year, $95 million deal with the Red Sox. His WAR during that time is minus 1.1. So WAR per every $10 million earned, negative 0.3. That's not great.
Yeah, they're losing 0.3 of a game for every $10 million they're paying Pablo Sandoval.
So yeah, that's not great there with Sandoval. Is he even on the team still?
I don't know. He might be in the minors.
Yeah, he might. He's just not good. They might have released him last year. I don't know, but it wasn't. They knew they're going to pay him anyways. No one's going to take his contract off their hands. So
the other one that would be an honorable mention was Josh Hamilton in Los Angeles.
That's
they paid him a lot of money for absolutely nothing.
And then he went off the rails.
Again.
Yeah. Other ones that are right now current. I'm just kind of looking through this Bleacher Report one. Victor Martinez. And that 4-year, $68 million deal he hadn't played really last couple of years.
No.
So.
Well, and one of them that was pretty bad was the Brewers trading Lorenzo Cain initially.
Yeah, it's not great. Also, the Royals, I know it's not a bad trade for the Rays, but when they got Shields and Davis is actually the better part of that trade.
Yeah.
That was pretty nice for the Royals, and they only gave up Will Myers, who never even stayed in Tampa. So
yeah. It's trades and contract signings have been a rough go in the MLB at times. I mean, Randy Johnson to the Mariners. Boy, the Montreal Expos screwed up, didn't they?
Yeah.
In 1989, they sent Randy Johnson to the Mariners for effectively no one. There was a bunch of, I think there were 6 minor league prospects at the time, and I think they played a total of 100 games in the MLB between the 6 of them.
And the big unit was pretty good.
Yeah, and Randy Johnson became one of the best pitchers ever.
Yeah.
5 Cy Young Awards and a World Series title in Arizona.
Another one, Melvin Upton Jr. for Toronto. I signed a 5-year, $75 million deal.
The artist formerly known as B.J. Upton?
Yes. Yeah. So, not great.
Why
was
did he
not
change
good.
his name? I liked B.J.
BJ was a lot better than Melvin.
Yeah. Melvin Upton Jr. just doesn't roll off the tongue as well as just B.J. Upton.
So, yeah, James Shields is on this list. 4-year, $75 million. Now, it was with the Padres, now with the White Sox.
Guys are getting paid obscene amounts of money.
And they're not this offseason. I think the teams are finally figuring out, hey, maybe we shouldn't pay Homer Bailey 6 years, $105 million.
And I think it's because there's really no other than, and Stan wasn't a free agent even. There's no huge prospects on the market. I mean, Darvish is going to get paid, but not.
Should we pay Matt Cain 6 years, $127 million?
Yeah, a lot of those are knee-jerk reactions
Yes.
to great years. One great year does not make a 7-year contract. Boston twice.
They're on this list a couple times for some pretty bad decisions. They had a stretch there when they had a really good GM. They made some good decisions, and then things just happen in Boston when they get pressured by the media up there to do something, and then they do, and it's an absolute mistake.
Here's another good trade that's not so good for the other team. Pedro Martinez to Boston. The Expos sent Martinez to Boston in 1997 after winning the Cy Young. They were in talks for the next year because he was going to be a free agent the next year about signing him to this huge, massive salary, and instead they traded him to the Red Sox for a prospect. We all know what Pedro Martinez did. The prospect was Carl Pavano.
Oh, Pavano, of course.
Who,
yeah,
who
I don't
had
know.
a 4.83 ERA in 6 seasons in Montreal.
All
Not
right.
exactly the Pedro Martinez numbers.
Yeah, Pedro Martinez was really good.
He's a Hall of Famer, deservingly.
And speaking of Hall of Famers, what do you think about this year's class with Jones, Tomei, Guerrero, and Hoffman?
I think every one of those 4 guys absolutely deserves to be in the Hall of Fame.
Yes.
100%. Chipper Jones deserves to be in every Hall of Fame all over the planet.
97.2% of the votes.
As he should have. I mean, that's the exact right percentage, I think, unless it had been 100. Because
410 out of 422.
Yeah. Chipper Jones is a legend, in not just in Atlanta, in baseball at this point. And Jim Thome was in an era of a lot of shady things. You know, he played in the steroid era. He hit 600 home runs in the steroid era,
and there's no connections.
Did it clean.
There's no connection to steroids at all. So.
I think that's incredible. You know, he competed with the likes of Barry Bonds and with the likes of Mark McGwire and Rafael Palmeiro and Jose Canseco and those guys.
Sosa, yeah.
And he was clean.
And he got almost 90% of the vote. He got 89.8%, and of course, Vladimir got 93%.
Vlad was an incredible athlete as well, and so it's great to see him get in because he's a really good athlete and a great personality for the game of baseball. He was always a happy guy. He was the guy that would show up to the home run derby with his hat backwards, like in Griffey style.
Throw it in the other batter's box so I can hit a home run over there.
Yeah, so. Absolutely. But he was always a personality around the game of baseball, so that was great. And then Trevor Hoffman. Trevor Hoffman is almost a polar opposite of Vlad Guerrero. Trevor Hoffman was not a loud guy. He was a guy that showed up, did his job, and walked off. 601 saves when he retired was the most in MLB history. And I think absolutely. I know the save is a relatively young statistic. It's only been around since the 80s.
But he did it
well. And people look at closers and go, how are you going to put a guy that only plays 1 inning a game in the Hall of Fame when he does it as well as Trevor Hoffman did to finish second in 2 Cy Young races? That's unheard of as a closer.
I know it's just 1 inning a game, but usually the most pressure-packed situation of the game because, hey, it's a 2-run game and I'm facing Barry Bonds up next. Like, who am I going to strike him out or not?
In most of those save cases,
1-run games.
You're the reason that they won the ball game, or
you close it out. You save the game.
Absolutely. And so I think a guy like Trevor Hoffman, and I think they should have considered Lee Smith, but I know he's off the ballot now. But I mean, he'll get a chance by the Modern Era Committee, but I just don't think it's going to happen. But a guy like Smith that should be in, and I know Mariano should be a first ballot Hall of Famer when he gets on. It's next year, right? When he's on the ballot.
I do not know when he's on the ballot.
I think it is next year that he's on the ballot, 2019.
So he'll be on there. So Hoffman, he did get almost 80% of the votes. The next 4 highest vote getters: Edgar Martinez at 70%, Mike Mussina at 63%, Roger Clemens at 57%, and Barry Bonds at 56%, with Curt Schilling at 51%. Those are the guys who got over half the votes but couldn't get in. At 75% is the benchmark.
Edgar's a tough conversation because he's the second greatest DH of all time. It's hard to put in the second greatest DH of all time before the first greatest DH of all time.
Yeah.
But the timing's not going to work out because next year's Edgar's last year on the ballot.
So last chance.
So yeah, it is his last chance. And next year's also Mariano's first chance. And we're talking the steroid guys are going to get another shot. They're steadily creeping up. They had, 58 and 57 this year?
57, 56.
57, 56, and they had, I think, 54 and 53 last year. So they're slowly creeping up. Schilling, I don't think, has the overall career workload that a lot of guys have, so I don't think he's going to get it. I think Mussina's got a shot just because he pitched on some really, really good teams in the late 90s and early 2000s with the Yankees. But I think...
Would you vote for Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens?
It's difficult because what they did to the game of baseball in the 90s and 2000s was horrible.
Yes.
It was not what you want in professional sports. It really put kind of a dark cloud over that entire era of baseball because that era is referred to as nothing but the steroid era.
Yeah.
And so I think it's awful what they did to baseball, but at the same time...
You can't tell the story of baseball without them.
Absolutely. And I think even without the steroids, they both would have had Hall of Fame careers. The problem is that as a voter, it's hard to rest on that.
It's hard to say, you know what? I think Bonds with his 7 MVPs, which is a is a Hall of Famer, but should we reward him for cheating? And like I can almost compartmentalize. You know what? Bonds is a Hall of Famer. He's not the home run king in my eyes.
Absolutely not.
But he is a Hall of Famer.
Absolutely
like you can,
not.
like I can compartmentalize. I know it's hard for other people to do that. To say like, you know what, he's a Hall of Famer. I don't count as a home run king because of all the stuff of his longevity was, I think, closely tied to the steroid era.
In my
steroids.
mind, the home run kings of baseball are Hank Aaron and Roger Maris.
Yep.
Single season and career records belong to Hank Aaron.
Until Stanton breaks it this year, playing in the Menlo League Park of Yankee Stadium.
But it's you look at a guy like that, and I think the issue for the committee is if you let Bonds in, you have to reconsider Rose.
Yeah,
and
I think Pete Rose should be a Hall of Famer.
I think he should too, but I don't think the MLB wants to have to reconsider Pete Rose. And I think if you put either Clemens or Bonds in, then all of a sudden you're opening yourself up to that.
And one thing that I've been listening to over the past couple of days, I know I was listening to The Herd yesterday, and they were talking about it, because Alex Rodriguez now is on the Sunday night crew for ESPN. He's been well ingratiated back with the sport as an announcer more and more, and other guys who've had some shady stuff happen.
Isn't he still getting paid by the Yankees too?
Possibly.
Like $30 million a year.
I mean, it happens. He's getting paid by like 3 different people now. Fox is still using him. ESPN's going to use him for a little bit, so they're ingratiating themselves with pretty much everybody. So he's been well received. Even Mark McGwire now as a hitting coach has been well received.
Yeah, he's done great in Los Angeles.
Well received there. Of course, Pete Rose doing Fox stuff as well. He's been well received. They've been all guys, except for maybe Pete Rose, who have really accepted their faults and like, you know what, yes. Eventually he's like, yes, I did it. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have done that. While Clemens and Bonds have denied, have been really strong with their support for themselves. Like, hey, I didn't actually do this. And do you think people take that against them? Like, we know you did it. Why are you still denying? Just own up to it, and we might be able to forgive you. Like, there's been that forgiveness has been lacking there.
Absolutely. And I think you look at guys like Mark McGwire, and one of the guys that doesn't get enough love that I think should is Rafael Palmeiro.
Yeah.
Rafael Palmeiro took it right to the grand jury and said, you know what, this is what I did. And, that's it. Exactly what happened right off the bat. There weren't very many questions with Rafael Palmeiro.
Yeah.
There were some questions with Mark McGwire. Mark McGwire denied it for a long time. But he owned up to it finally, and so
it's turned his post-playing career around.
Yeah, it really has. It really has. I think that's what opened up the opportunity for him to be a hitting coach originally in St. Louis for a year and then moving to Los Angeles. And he's done some really good things in Los Angeles. I think the organization as a whole for the Dodgers has benefited since Mark McGwire showed up.
Yeah. And like Bonds, he was a jerk to the media whenever he played.
Boy.
So like that didn't help himself either there.
Not only did he actually physically have a big head, he had a big head.
Yeah, and then one thing that I always kind of questioned the hypocrisy of some of the writers as if how much they knew about the steroid era when it was going on, and yet they still voted for steroid users to MVPs. Those were awards given out by writers, and now they're not putting guys in. The writers aren't for the Hall of Fame. So you see that hypocrisy. Like at the time it was fine, but now looking back, it wasn't okay. So we're going to punish you now for it. So that's one thing you can also look forward with that. Also, a couple other guys who got some votes. That notable Larry Walker got 34% of the votes. Manny Ramirez at 22%. Scott Rowland, he got 10% of the vote. Sammy Sosa 8%.
Scott.
Andrew Jones 7%.
Yeah, I don't think Scott Rowland's going to stay on the ballot very long.
Johan Santana and Jamie Moore both 2.4%.
I think they drop off now because I think you have to get 5% or more, right?
So yeah, they're all going to drop off along with Chris Carpenter, Kerry Wood, Carlos Lee, Orlando Hudson. Carlos Lee got a vote.
He got a vote. Good.
So did Hernandez.
I think some of these guys. Yeah, I mean they beat the criteria to be put on the ballot, but come on. Roland's not going to get in.
No one voted for Zambrano, though.
Well, duh. Carlos Zambrano had 2 good years total, and then ruined his career in Miami by destroying a telephone.
That was so funny. Gary Sheffield got 11% of the vote. So
Gary Sheffield, that weird batting stance.
So definitely some guys who were notable. So it was nice to see some guys get in.
You know who I was surprised at how little votes they got was Omar Vizquel. Guy won 11 Gold Gloves at shortstop. That's impressive. I mean, there are very few guys ahead of you at that position. Ozzie Smith might be the only one. He had 13.
37% of the vote.
Yeah, and I'm surprised it was that low. I know Ozzie had 13 Gold Gloves at shortstop, but I can't think of anybody else that had any more than Omar Vizquel.
Yeah, so that was the name you and Kramer were talking about last week. As hey, this guy should be a Hall of Famer.
Because
so.
you look at Ozzie Smith's career. Ozzie Smith was not an offensive player. He did not have a great average. He didn't hit any home runs. He got in for his defense. I think if he got in for his defense, I think Vizquel should too.
Some notable first-time eligible players for next year. Of course, Mariano Rivera, Roy Halladay, Todd Helton, Andy Pettit, and Lance Berkman.
Well, Berkman, if Bagwell and Biggio are in, Berkman should be too.
Career OPS of 943.
I think if you look at Halladay, baseball misses Roy Halladay still. That was a big loss for the game of baseball. But do the writers kind of let that cloud their vision a little bit? Because Halladay had a good career.
203 wins.
He had a very, very good career.
3.38 ERA, strikeouts. He had.
But Halladay's kind of on the edge of that Hall of Fame pitcher line. You know what I mean? In the same way Mike Mussina is. He's kind of on the edge of that line, and I don't know if the open wound that is still there with Roy Halladay will kind of take over the writers. I think eventually he deserves to be in the Hall of Fame, but I don't necessarily see Roy Halladay as a first ballot Hall of Famer.
And I don't think so either. And he had 2,117 saves in his. I mean, not saves, but strikeouts. A lot of saves.
You want to talk about a record?
So that's how many strikeouts he had, and including
a fantastic career.
Yes,
really,
he did
in Toronto and Philadelphia both.
So definitely one of those guys who was a difference maker.
He's one of very few that's won a Cy Young in both leagues.
Yeah. So he's definitely a guy that's going to be up there. Of course, we both think Rivera's going to be first ballot Hall of Famer. There's not much question with that.
Absolutely. And I think Rivera deserves to be in the conversation for the best pitcher of all time. Because he was that guy. He had one pitch, and he'd tell you where he was going to throw it, and you still wouldn't be able to hit it.
So definitely trying to get there. And also Rivera trying to be the debate who gets the highest percentage to get into the Hall of Fame. The highest top four. Griffey, of course, a couple years ago at 99.36%.
I can't believe he didn't get 100%.
Tom Seaver had 98.84%.
Yeah.
Nolan Ryan at 98.79%, and Cal Ripken Jr. at 98.53%.
I want to find the guy that didn't vote for those guys.
Like, so what were you thinking?
What kind of horrible person?
Like, well, everybody else is going to vote for him. That's the dumbest argument ever.
Yeah.
Like,
make it 100%. Somebody.
That's why I'm baffled. Like, if you go back to the years and how LeBron and Michael Jordan were never unanimous MVPs, like, who is the guys like, I think Karl Malone had a better year than MJ. It's like, no. Go away.
They like big man basketball.
Yeah. So it's one thing that was kind of like be that one guy's contrary. Like, you know what? I'm not going to vote for Ken Griffey Jr.
Yeah.
Because everybody else is. So that one jerk, or he just forgot to send his ballot in.
Yeah.
So I don't know how you have a Hall of Fame vote and be like, you know what? I'm not going to fill it out because it's no biggie. So I haven't seen any news about the exact deal for Escobar. So maybe we'll have that for the afternoon show.
Maybe.
So that's going to be it here for Friday Take with Devin Albertson and Ryan Elliott. We'll be back from 2 to 5 with the weekend
sneak peek of WSK.
sports kickoff. Exactly. And, of course, we have one more show today. Good old wrestling, 8 to 10 p.m. New show we have here.
Boy, Kramer, Devin, and Jonathan.
Yep.
That's going to be fun.
Should be a fun show this afternoon. Also, make sure next Thursday you check out Dropping Dimes with Perry Randall and Noah Cooper. It was really good first show.
Yeah, got a chance to hear that yesterday. Those two click, man. They really have some great conversations, and both, they're really honest guys. They're going to say what they think. And
they know the NBA.
Yeah, they've got a lot of good ideas, and yet, like you said, very knowledgeable about the sport of basketball, really, in general. And
sorry to Perry, but Noah has a better all-star team. That's beside the point. Also, make sure you follow them on Twitter at droppin_dimes1. Follow us on Twitter at X106 Friday Take, and then also at X106_sports. So a lot of Twitter accounts that you can follow for us to get all of the information. Also, their Twitter account for Dropping Dimes is awesome. It's great. So
well designed.
It's well designed. So we'll see you this afternoon from 2 to 5 here on X106.